Hey everyone, welcome to the KE Report and a company update from Graphene Manufacturing Group, chatting again with Craig Nicol, founder and CEO. Company is traded on the TSX Venture Exchange under the symbol GMG, on the OTCQX under the symbol GMGMF. And everyone, thanks for continuing to send in your questions. I have a question for all of you listening because I feel like a lot of all of you that listen to these interviews with Craig are really up to date on really the three main product lines this company has. But if you want more information on any of these product lines or a bit of a refresher, please send me an email along with your questions, and I'll make sure Craig and I cover more of those refreshers for future calls. In this call, though, we're going to look at all three divisions: Thermal XR, G Lubricant, and the battery division in terms of updates that Craig can give us. We'll start with the Thermal XR division. The most recent news on October 28th, a distribution agreement through Beijer Reef and Kirby network. Craig, explain this deal. Explain how Thermal XR is being used or can be used for this large company that, from my understanding, sells a lot of big equipment.
Yeah, thanks, Corey. Great to be back on. Beijer Ref is basically one of the largest air conditioning and refrigeration distributors in the world. They have a large market share in Australia, and they've been around for quite a while. They're in 40 countries, and they've got a brilliant name for what they do. And it's great to work with them. We have been working with them for some time. And, I think this is the next stage in our relationship, and I look forward to working with them going forward. Basically from mid-month in Australia, when you order any of the chillers or condenser coils or refrigeration coils, you can answer and get a price for also getting graphene coating on it. Now, what that would give the end customer is the ability to have a 5-year warranty on that coil, which is longer than normal, and also provide efficiencies, which we believe are fairly documented well now, so to the point where the customer should see an energy saving on that coil as well. So big step for TXR, big step for GMG, big step for the industry, because I really don't think there's any other company in the world, certainly for graphene coating, but really a fixed price coating service job wherever you are in the country getting that done. That's really a first as well. So really big step, and really happy. A lot of work to get here, many years of work. And I think it's going to change the whole industry on many fronts.
Craig, can you share any more details about this in terms of what your profit margin looks like? If there are any minimum guarantees for this sort of deal, anything that you can share with us to show us what we could maybe expect from GMG on the revenue side?
Yeah, so we are doing the service through subcontractors, and we have a team of subcontractors around the country that we're working with, and they are coordinated through a master contractor who have already gone through or will be going through our spray academy. Some have already gone through, which gives them the right to give, or we allow them to have the 5-year warranty after they've sprayed the coil. So it gives us certification over our applicators. The margins are typical of the paint that we would normally get from selling into this industry that we've talked about in the past. So, it's a profitable outcome. I think it's going to be good for Beijer. It's going to be good for our distribution application teams around the country. And it will be, I think the best in the end for Beijer's customers. And, that's what it's all about, is to give them this next level service, which will provide them with a whole lot more corrosion resistance, as well as less maintenance on their coils, and more energy savings than hopefully they've ever seen. We expect that the case. So it is a huge shift in the market. I think you'll see a lot of other companies jumping on board, but we're very happy to do it with Beijer first.
So, Craig, I'm curious. We've talked a whole lot about all these companies, none specifically, that are testing your products, especially Thermal XR. How long, or I assume Beijer was testing it, how long had they been testing this for?
Yeah, so some of the biggest names in the world of air conditioning have been testing it for 3 to 4 years. They are all businesses that need equipment that run for long periods of time, and then they need to have a surety that we as a company can provide the service and the product that we say we can. So that takes some time to, I think, de-risk us as a supplier, as any big company would want to do to manage their supplier risk. That's really important for them. So we're happy to do that. But that is definitely what's been happening over the years. And certainly we have been working with Beijer for quite a few years as well. So, it all comes together that when we can announce this now, well, that's only because we've just done so much work in the past that we can show that this is working. And, I think the customer in the end gets, happy with what we've done. And then that enables us to be able to go and do this again. And you do it again, eventually it becomes part of what people expect. And then it becomes the new benchmark, which is what hopefully, sometime through next year, we're going to start to see, what we think is even more companies coming on board. And you might eventually start to see that this is just being the normal, that every coil in Australia is coated. And I really don't think that's a bad thing for everyone. Now, that is certainly a good thing for GMG, but the industry needs it. The coils are needed to be so much more efficient and last longer than ever before because electricity prices are higher and they're getting more expensive as a kit. So, this whole thing is good for everyone. And I think, this is the first step. And I think this will flow around the world as well because, Australian air conditioning is probably one of the toughest markets to get it right because of our pretty intense, robust conditions that we need to meet. So, and I think we can make it work in other jurisdictions as well, just as much as we can make it work here. So I think it shows really good promise for the company.
So to that point about this potentially becoming the industry standard where every coil is coated with thermal XR, Craig, what's holding companies back from that? Are they simply testing the market? They want to see if the demand's there? Would maybe a government order that says you need to get more efficient, that help? What would, in your eyes, help push companies over the line to just say, instead of offering this as an add-on to our customers, we're just going to do it?
Yeah, I think you get enough knowledge and understanding in the market that something like this, which is really quite revolutionary of using thermal radiation in addition to convection and conduction, so using that third heat transfer method and getting really good corrosion resistance all at the same time, it needs a lot of repetition for people to really accept that. And it's such a different thing than what chemical engineers, for instance, have been told at university. So hence that needs to be overcome. But once you overcome that, I think you can then start pushing things, in ways that make everyone realize that this is just what should be done on every coil. But I think things like Beijer announcement is absolutely the type of thing you need to do when you have a trusted partner that's one of the biggest in the world. It says we're now offering this as a standard offer. And, that is a massive step. And anyone who is potentially on the brink of jumping on or not will likely see that as a big thing for them to rethink about how to approach this. And we're certainly seeing that. It's seen as this is kind of if you like, we've always said there will be a domino. And what's the first domino? And maybe this is it. I think we'll look back and I think we will see that this is the first of quite a few big milestones which make us basically the standard for every coil in the world.
Okay, well, I'm sure I'll be following up with you in future calls, and I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of questions asking for updates on this. Let's follow this up with questions on EPA approval for thermal XR in the US. We're all waiting for it. A lot of people are targeting the very beginning of next year, 2026 is when that could happen. Any updates on EPA approval and what maybe you're doing to prep that North American or US market?
Yeah, excellent question. So, obviously working well with Nu-Calgon, our partner, for a couple of years now, we've been working together to prep the market and obviously channel everything we can together with our consultants to get the EPA approval. We're still holding December as our time. We haven't heard anything different around it that could be, different to what we expect for our time of approval. We'll get a consent notice. That consent notice needs to be agreed. We've got to work through that on what that means. Obviously everyone now is aware that as of this morning or last night, depends on where you are, the American government is back in play after the shutdown finished. We had heard that the team that was working on our submission was working through that period. And we have heard that they went through the final meeting and they got that approved. Now, let's see the next phase and let's see, the next stage. It's obviously very close to December, being mid-November. And, we don't expect that to be any later. Now, the exact date we can do the first shipment, because obviously we've got orders already in place. We'll obviously be telling people that as soon as it happens. There's been a lot of prepping, a lot of little R&D projects being done around the country in America and Mexico as well. There's already a lot of projects been happening there as well with Nu-Calgon. So it's very exciting. The space, the prep is there. I think data centers also will be big for Nu-Calgon as well in America. The data centers being the number one investment focus in America, you could say, on top of AI. There's a lot there that's going in our favor. And we're both talking to the OEMs as well as the companies that do the data centers, as well as the companies that develop the tech around them, and then the companies that distribute that as well. So there's a lot of conversations in all of that space. And our patent, which has come through for this product, will definitely go through in America. And our belief that, patents in Australia generally flow through to America, and likewise the other way. And therefore, we'll have the only patented product for 20 years that can really do great heat exchange benefits, as well as the corrosion resistance with graphene, and one of the biggest cooling opportunities that, we've ever had with data centers. So, it's like a perfect storm. Let's just hope that, we expect it to come through and be a big year next year. And I think, all intents and purposes, it should be.
So with Nu-Calgon and entrance into the US market, in terms of marketing, do you have to co-fund any of this? Can you give us insights on what Nu-Calgon is doing, or even what you're doing to help get the word out for when this EPA approval comes?
Yeah, so we've got agreement where we work through that together, and it'd be case by case basis. But they've got 37 sales people with 4,000 distribution points. It's not hard to see how that volume is going to get quite large, quite quick. And a lot of this is, solution selling. So talking to people and getting people on board, and that, so you can do so much with promotion. You've really got to get out there and talk to people and get people. And that's what we found here in Australia. You get the big influenced, the people who need to be influenced around decision making, around big deals, and then you get some deals, and then that kind of feeds it. So, I think there's a combination of that with we'll definitely be doing some promotion work. Yeah, and that together, should really make a good year next year, because it's not a silver lining as such, because it would have been better if we actually had the approval a year ago when we thought we were going to be getting it. But there has been somewhat a silver lining in the fact that there's been some, expected requirements built now around people want that more than maybe a year ago, because they've been studying it and they really like what they see.
So, Craig, one final question on thermal XR then, and this entrance into the US market. Any expectations, any forecasts that we can put on sales, or just how much you're expecting to have to produce and supply to Nu-Calgon to satisfy their customers early on in the first few months or 6 months once the approval comes?
Yeah, we've already got orders for a couple $100,000. I think that's already been published. So that's just for basically the initial stock, and that will provide, I think, some initial demand soak up. But the space that I think we're talking about is much bigger than that per annum. But that's what we've got to work through. The opportunity with Nu-Calgon is quite large. They've got the biggest market segment of the global space by far. The Australian market, the American market for coatings on air conditioners is already an enormous market, and we expect it to really expand with our graphene coating, not to be taking over existing market so much, but more just really expanding. So people who didn't coat previously would now start coating. And there's a lot of cooling demand going on, as we just talked about. we do feel it's going to be quite successful. We're a low burn cost company, relatively. We're really only a bit more than a couple of million, or $3.5 million US per annum in costs for our whole company. So the chance for us to kind of push through next year and get some good revenues amongst all of our different revenue opportunities and start to push into positive cash flow. The opportunity is there. We haven't got any formal guidance, as I said, but it is looking good for next year to be able to push some good revenue through and see how it affects our bottom line.
All right, Craig, thanks for addressing those. Let's move over to G Lubricants. Couple questions also on EPA and REACH approvals to get G Lubricant into the market. What can you share with us on those fronts?
Yeah, G Lubricant is fine for Europe right now. So we've got a number of customers, distributors that we're working through final orders on, which is exciting. And then to get that launched, we really got to wait for the palletized stock, which is coming in any day, which we announced a couple of weeks ago that was coming, because obviously they want to distribute to different retail sites or distributors, and then they can, start flowing the product. That's really exciting. So really then we're down to G Lubricant for EPA approval. We are taking a bit of a step-by-step approach. We're waiting for the G Lubricant for TXR approval in EPA. We'll learn some significant learnings out of that when the final consent notice comes through. And then we'll take stock of that and how we can apply for G Lubricant EPA approval. The EPA approval could be off the back of the TXR approval with no extra work, but that we think that's a bit aspirational. We think there's going to be some work which we'll need to put together an application, and it might be basically a slight variation on the TXR work, because the EPA has already done an assessment of our graphene. Once they've given us the TXR approval, then their graphene is verified in a way, which is good, because it means it's going to be faster for other products like G Lubricant and Super G.
Craig, what about online sales for G Lubricant? We talked about that in the last couple of calls, I believe. Any updates on the online sales?
Yeah, it's consistent, and it's companies generally buying to be able to test so that they can use it in potentially their fleets or otherwise. So it's around the world, and it's consistent, it's daily. It's good to see. It's got the opportunity to get our product out there, get feedback, and so far we haven't had a bad review. So it feels very positive. We get some fantastic outcomes. Some people even up to 30% fuel saving, which go on our social media posts, because there's so many of them. We can't really press release them, but that is a great opportunity to show to people that the product works, which we know it does. It's done an enormous amount of testing, and people can feel it, understand it, pay, respect it, pay the money for it, and then give feedback and grow the news and self kind of promote, which is one of the key reasons why we have that website going. And we aim to do that with Thermal XR very shortly.
All right, what about batteries? We haven't gotten an update on the battery division in quite a while. How are things going on that front?
Look, the batteries has been the best as ever. And honestly, we're very happy with where it's at. But we are not going to come out with anything until we get it verified by third party. Obviously, that's why we're working with the BIC, because they truly are world leading in this space. So, we're working through some stuff, and, we'd hope to give you some news shortly. It's very prospective, very exciting. And, when developing a complete new technology, it is, it does take a bit of work. That's what it's all about. And we've only been doing it for 4 years, whereas all of our other products are genuinely, 8-9 years or so. So it's not nothing. We've only just done it for 4 years, but, it's come a long way recently, internally. And so we aim to give that news out shortly, which, I've never said to you or anyone else before. So that should help people understand that it is coming along.
What about testing data? We haven't seen any testing data in a while. Are you still testing? What's going on the testing front for these batteries?
Yeah, so the testing is part and parcel of, this whole development phase. And you develop, optimize, and then you get it tested. And there are a lot of companies under NDA waiting for this, and too many to count, and they still keep coming in right across all the different applications. And it's a B2B fast charge battery. That's what people are interested to see. There's basically really nothing out there in our space that we think we can fill. So the market is really quite big market which has really not got much alternative or almost no alternative to what we're proposing. It's quite a disruptive battery in terms of its application focus. Rio Tinto obviously is still there, and we're working with them on, and using that in their large trucks, which is obviously a massive thing. We're one of the largest mining companies in the world, and the application is exactly the application we want to focus on, which is B2B fast charging. If you have a lithium-ion battery in a large truck, it'll probably take half an hour to 3/4 of an hour to actually get it recharged. And if you got a battery like ours, we're proposing is a 5-minute charge. Well, you need double the amount of fleet if you want to do the same work with a 30 to 35-minute charge. That's a lot extra trucks and operations, and that is still our focus, to give a battery that fast charging, that long life, and costs to the point where it becomes very beneficial for businesses. Now you could see how you can take that from trucks to trains to planes. All of them need this type of battery. Then in communications, some electronics will be quite eager to also, keen to see this. So fast charging electronics. And then there's also robotics. So humanoid robotics, how do you think people are going to want to run those? I think a business is going to want them fast charging, use as much as possible, and get back out there, rather than potentially sitting for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours charging, and then you then get it to run it for 8 hours. So I think the perspective of being able to use getting a 5-minute charge and run it for 2 hours rather than 2-hour charge and running it for 8 hours is going to be quite prospective as well. So that market it's obviously very nascent, it's very new, but I also think it's similar. And so the market for this type of application is going to grow for sure. And I think we've got very little competition in it. Once we need to get out the results, people see what we're saying, and I think it'll be quite exciting. I'm certainly very excited about it.
I think a lot of people are excited about it, Craig, and they do see the market size as being attractive. I think we all just want a product. We want to see a battery get out there and have people actually using it, but a time that will come. Let's talk graphene production then. Question on your costs to produce graphene. How competitive are they, I guess, across the industry?
Yeah, so we operate an upstream and a downstream business. So we upstream is like an oil and gas business. So we make graphene, and we also make products, and we can use other people's graphene, but we have to do a lot of post-processing to get it to where we need it to be. So we know what the market is, and right now we can competitively produce graphene and sell it into the market. It's just not our focus. The market isn't as big as you'd expect, and you've got to do a lot of work to get customers there to be able to work with it. And the money we make out of our downstream products is far more than the money you can make in basic graphene manufacturing. All being said, it is good to make our costs as low as possible in our production. So we've got our Gen 2, our next generation graphene production plant already underway. We've invested around a bit under $1 million Australian for that. All the long leads have been procured, and I think they'll be ready to be starting to put together a new plant area in our existing headquarters in Brisbane, and we expect that to go live around June next year. That's going to be 20 times the production rate compared to our existing production rate, which means that we can produce even more at even lower cost. And that total capex is going to be around $2 million Australian for that project. So it's a low capex, low OPEX product to make. And, that 10 ton that we expect from that on our market pricings, would be sitting at around $100 million to $200 million in revenue in Australian dollars. So we invest $2 to $3 million Australian to make $100 to $200 million per annum. Now that's what comes from years and years and years of tech development, and people being patient for us. That's where we're heading. So that 10 ton that we expect to turn on in June will turn the company into the ability to be able to relocate and, as in put a new project like that in North America, which we, like to do next year. So Canada and American expansion plans, are really the next case. Once you've got that production system running in Australia, and you can see how the 10-ton system works really quite well with any natural gas coming in, well, we're away. And then we can start expanding around the world.
So if you're looking at all this expansion globally, would you then be selling your graphene to other companies, or would it all be used for internal products?
Right now, we're still focused on internal products, and we're still focused on making sure that our internal products are the best for their purpose. And we have many products developments that we could roll out. There are so many opportunities in these products that we already have good market leadership in. It gets quite overwhelming on which ones you want to do. So we keep focused on just the existing products we have. And then, as we grow those products in their market applications, we'll be able to release second, third versions, fourth versions, and then obviously slight variances and different ways we apply the product. And then we think that'll really keep us quite happy on graphene production needs. And then obviously the battery is a large bulk graphene production play. So, you can get excited about how much graphene you need for fluids or liquids, we call them, which is our Super G, our G Lubricant, and our Thermal XR. But the amount you need for our battery is enormous. And that's what that's the real focus for Gen 2. Gen 2 is about getting a graphene production system which can make the battery work really effectively and efficiently.
All right, Craig, thanks for addressing all of these. I know we always go through a lot of information, but there's a lot of questions that I keep getting on a weekly, somewhat daily basis. So everyone keep sending those questions in. And final question then, Craig, to get you out of here. Catalyst, give us an outline what we can expect on the news front.
Yeah, I think, we're really trying to push out more news on G Lubricant performance. Hopefully we can get some information out on fleet performance, which we're doing a lot of trials around the world on. TXR distribution, G Lubricant, small pack distribution announcements, some projects we think we should come through on for different projects, especially Thermal XR. We're getting a lot of interest in different project work. And some battery and Super G announcements. We're really hoping to get them out as fast as we can. Just got to finalize the tech outcomes and get all it third-party verified, and then we can get the information out. So, that lots of opportunity. And of course, EPA approval on Thermal XR is going to be a big one, and we hope to have that out before the end of the year as well.
Oh, that's huge. Yeah. I'll definitely be following up with you before the end of the year anyway, and hopefully we can be talking about that EPA approval. Everyone, as I said, please keep sending me your questions. And Craig, thank you very much for addressing all this. We'll chat again in about 3 to 4 weeks' time.
Thanks, Corey.